Good evening, everyone. We're so excited to have you with us this evening. My name is Erica Pope, and I am the current national president for Tau Beta Sigma. We are excited to have you with us for our second National Leadership Development Series session. This evening, we're going to be starting out in this main room to talk a little bit about some key points of being a member of the national leadership team. And you'll get a chance to hear from each of our leaders here from both the National Council, the Board of Trustees, and the Tau Beta Sigma Alumni Association Executive Council. And so some of the topics we're going to try to talk through in this first part, and then the second half of this call, we hope, will be breaking off into some breakout rooms so that you have a chance to speak specifically to the audience and to the group that you're most interested in running for or really learning more about. The breakout rooms are set up in a way to where you're able to bounce to whatever room you would like to. So if you maybe want to spend a little time with the TBS AAEC, and then maybe jump over specifically to Allison to talk about VP of Communication and Recognition things. I myself will stay in this room, but you're welcome to jump from whichever room you would like to learn about the area that you're most interested in, or maybe to buffet it and you get a chance to listen to a little bit of everything that each organization has going on. So with that in mind, some of the topics we're going to be talking about this evening are the time commitment of being on the national leadership team. We'll be discussing overall expectations, what we expect of our national leadership team members, dynamics and collaboration within the councils, and so who works closely with who, key places where the national leadership team represents Tau Beta Sigma. And specifically, as we get into our breakout rooms, you're going to hear more about our stakeholders, current projects each group or each person is working on within their role, some of our hopes for the near future for the role, the rosebuds and thorns about each role or each group and the challenges that we are working through, and then expectations again, specifically about what that transition will look like on the national leadership team in each group. So without further ado, we're going to start with speaking about the time commitment. And you're going to have a chance to hear from each one of the groups so that you understand the time commitment of being on the National Council, the AAEC, as well as the Board of Trustees. And so since I have the mic, I'll go ahead and just tell you a little bit about, National Council commitment. So the National Council, we meet once a month. Of course, we meet in the interim for like special meetings that are needed and are scheduled as is needed. All of our calls take place online, specifically Zoom. So that's why we're actually using this platform. And usually they last from about 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much business we really have to tackle during any given time. The purpose of the meeting is specifically to provide updates on business items, things that are happening within the organization. We use that time to make a lot of decisions together as an organization, and then any other updates within each individual officer's roles and what they're working on and how we can best support each other. We all are expected to turn in a report, usually 3 days ahead, roughly, sometimes up to a week, depending on if we have a lot of business to cover. We want to make sure that we're able to do our homework, read each other's reports, and come in with feedback or questions that we may have. Specifically, during those meetings, we always make sure that we have a member of our Board of Trustees present, as well as our TBS AAEC Executive Board, so that they are able to share what's happening within their roles and their governing groups. And we can find and figure out how a lot of what we're doing may be coexisting or maybe even intersecting in what they are doing. And then additionally, we also host specific meetings that pertain to other components and other members of our national leadership team. So for example, we have district counselors in our 6 districts. And so we have a monthly meeting with them where we're able to share some of the work that we're doing with them, keep them up to date with the comings and goings of the national organization, and prepare them for whatever is to come within their role. And as well as our chapter visitation assistants, because we have several of those spread out across the country who are doing that great work of going to our campuses, and they are visiting with our chapters and really bringing that information back to us. And so a lot of that information and some of the information that we share with each other with the work that we're doing in our monthly meetings, we impart that information during our district counselor calls and our chapter visitation assistant calls. So yeah, and I will go ahead and pass it over to Dave and Thea, who are going to talk a little bit about the time commitment of the AAEC, and if they want to introduce themselves as well, I will pass it over to y'all.
All right, very excited to be here with y'all and to share a little bit about the TBSAA Executive Council. My name is David Alexander. I'm a life member of the Gamma Omega chapter at the University of Pittsburgh, and I currently serve as the chairperson. And I'm joined by my vice chair, Dr. Thea Murphy. So if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Thea Murphy. I am a life member of the Beta Kappa chapter at Morris Brown College.
All right, so a little bit about the EC. Some of the same things that we just heard from Erica really are going to apply in our space as well. So we do meet once a month as well. And then in between, there are times where we are going to have periodic other meetings. Based on things that may come up or there may be different events that we have planned. And it really allows us to keep the business moving forward, but also share those updates that we do have. Our meetings are held online via Zoom, where our meetings probably last typically about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it's really, we're going to go through each of our different director reports to share the updates of all the different great things that we're working on, vote on any things that we have to vote on, and approve any sort of business of the organization or on behalf of the Alumni Association. With that being said, you are going to be required to submit a report at least 3 days in advance. And that reports are all going to be tied to your specific goals that you're working on. And it becomes this running document to kind of show the progress you're making along the way, but allow somebody else to come in and see the progress you've made up to that point and to be able to carry that forward if needed. We also do have committees within the Executive Council. And so each of our directors does serve as a liaison for the committee in some situations, or most situations does head the efforts behind that and keeping those organized. So some of those committees could be around our membership initiatives, different fundraising initiatives, but it's really the grassroots works that keeps us moving. And I know that all of our directors are really appreciative of the volunteers that we have on our committees that allow us to continue to do that good work. The other thing that's really important to call out is we are here to represent our alumni. And so when we're at district conventions, national conventions, and things like that, we make an intentional focus to make sure that we're making connections and networking with all the alumni in attendance. We do partner with our district alumni leaders and really work to create those meaningful experiences at the district conventions for everybody that's able to attend. And Thea has the pleasure of leading our local alumni associations and our district leaders in that space. I'm going to go ahead and share with her a little bit about what that looks like from her end.
Yeah, so in addition to the monthly meetings and other necessary meetings, when it comes to LAAs, there are additional meetings that you have to make time and commit to, not only planning for, but leading. And so part of that is the onboarding of new LAAs. So working with new interest groups and meeting with them from their initial inquiry and keeping a regular cadence of communication with them throughout their application process. Also with current LAAs that are already approved, meeting with them, we meet with them at least on a quarterly basis, sometimes more, depending on what we have going on, just to touch bases with them, see what type of support they need from us, give them best practices and tips, and allow them to network and talk with each other about the work and best practices with their operations. And then finally, when it comes to like district convention planning, we are meeting monthly once it's time to start planning. So around October, we start to meet monthly with the DAA leaders to begin to plan district convention, as well as meeting with members of the National Council, members of the Active Council, governors, counselors, to really make sure that we're planning a cohesive district convention experience. So it really does take, in addition to, plus in my role, I serve on a national committee as a liaison for a national committee. So it is some time commitment. You have to be organized. You have to be a good time manager so that you can plan to be where you need to be with the work you need to bring with you.
All right, we'll go ahead and turn it over now to Rosalind McDonald and Jason Dornbush, who are representing our Board of Trustees tonight.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Dornbush, and I'm here with Rosalind McDonald. We are trustees for the Board of Trustees. So just like the other two councils, we meet via Zoom or via Google. We use an online meeting platform. However, our meetings typically are spread out a little bit further. We meet on average about once every 6 weeks, and they do last approximately 2 hours in length. We try to keep our business concise. Prior to the meeting, we do, if there has been movement or progression on one of our projects, we will submit a report beforehand, especially if there's documentation or something that needs to be reviewed by the other trustee members. In addition to the reports and phone calls, there are a few other not requirements, but some expectations that have been set forth that the group, the trustees themselves, at the beginning of the biennium sets forth. One of those expectations for this biennium is that the trustees are donors of the sorority. There is not a required amount, but we do suggest a minimum as a group for ourselves to abide by. And then the other kind of expectation that we have is that trustees for required travel will be reimbursed, but for unrequired travel, so that would be something like if we were attending a district convention, that that expense is covered by the trustee themselves. I think that is time commitment and kind of the expectations for the trustees.
All right, thank you, Jason. My name is Leslie Garten. I'm the National Vice President for Special Projects, and I will tell you a little bit more for National Leadership Team for National Council about more in-person time commitments. So for us on the National Council, actually for all 3 sets, we have 2 in-person meetings per year. We have our summer council. Also with National Council, we do our National Leadership Conference with our district officers. Besides that goes along with that, then we also do our winter council meeting. The winter council meeting, we just had it not last week, but the week before during Martin Luther King weekend. We try to take that long weekend and just get everything set up for National Convention, and for, if it's a non-convention year, just more strategic planning, just all the different stuff. There's always plenty of business to talk about. Our summer council meetings are held right before our National Leadership Conference, and then which that's held on our odd years right before National Convention. So it is a stretch of lots of different meetings, which you just get used to, you enjoy, you put in the work, you make it work in there. So good stuff. And then so National Leadership Conference, talking about that a little bit more, it's time focused. We focus on working on leadership skills with our district counselors and our student leaders, our district officers. It's programmed by the Vice President for Membership and Expansion. We also support that VP in helping providing relevant programming to our students. We also, in addition to those 2 in-person meetings, us on National Council also Board of Trustees and the EC. We attend at least one district convention, if not many, many more. So our Marches and April weekends are hectic but fun. Lots of travel. If you like travel, this is definitely something for you. You get to see lots of fantastic places. It just depends on our schedule and what is needed by our student delegation and our alumni delegation. We try to save money by selecting the district conventions that are closer to us in proximity, like maybe within our district that we currently live in, but we just kind of do the best we can to be present and help support the active student organization that we can. I'm going to pass this over to Allison to talk about the week-to-week commitment within our leadership team.
But before we do that, one of the things to keep in mind about our summer council meetings and our winter council meetings is that, occasionally we do just decide to do all of those virtually. The pandemic era has kind of set us up for that. So, during those 2 years, we typically did all of our summer and all of our winter, with the exception of our last summer, which was at National Convention in Grand Rapids. They were all one winter was done in person, and then the next one was virtual, as well as that next summer. So whether it be because maybe we want to save a little bit of money and the business that we're handling can be done easily virtually, we do have that option to be able to do that. Or if it's a situation where, for example, our winter council meeting, the last one that we did last year, we decided to stay home because COVID was still on the rise. There was a high spike. And so to keep everyone safe and to be good stewards of the finances that come in, we decided that we would stay home and plan to be there for summer if our situation would allow us to do that. So while we anticipate that they'll be in person, we have built a model to be able to do these very same meetings virtually as well.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Lehman. I'm the National Vice President for Communication and Recognition. And I'm going to talk a bit about, for my role specifically, what the typical kind of workflow looks like from week to week or month to month. So as the communications officer for the National Council, and by extension, a communications resource for the Board of Trustees and the Alumni Association's Executive Council, my communication work happens pretty consistently throughout the year. Whether it's generating new social media content and email communications, or doing follow-up on those communications. That typically takes about 2 or 3 hours per week of prep and review time. And I partner with the National President, Erica Pope, to review and finalize everything before it goes out. Then there's also project focused work. So whether that's in the communications realm, the recognition realm, or the I will do whatever I'm asked to realm, there's also more project time that you're able to build in. So that definitely builds up around certain times of the year. A couple of examples include the lead up to Giving Tuesday in November, so our annual day of giving, or one of our annual days of giving, as well as our 13 days of Tau Beta Sigma in March with the lead up to Founders Day. Those are very heavy content driven projects, so that takes a lot of time and planning. But the good thing about that is we know when they're going to happen far out. So as an example, for Giving Tuesday this past year, I think all of the content was complete and finalized about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. So that way on the day, yes, I was still monitoring and making sure posts went out and responding to people's questions and issues, but I wasn't running up to the deadline with trying to actually create the content. So you're able to use a bit of time management, project management skills in that way to pace yourself through those large events. And then there's also other commitments that we have. I could dive into like a whole bunch more detail, but in general, you can schedule yourself for project type of work. But in addition, then on a monthly basis, we have commitments of finalizing the minutes from our council calls, giving support in minutes completion for the district counselor and chapter visitation assistant calls, drafting newsletters that go out on a monthly basis, things of that nature that, again, they're pretty regularly known. It takes another maybe hour or two per month, but you can plan for that. And I try to just dedicate for me personally, my Monday evenings and Sunday evenings are typically my Tau Beta Sigma time. But you also have some weeks where it's really light and you get to just kind of take that off of your calendar and have a bonus night. I think that's everything for me for right now. Erica, do you want us to go kind of up the line? So I'll hand it right back over to Leslie to talk a bit about her week-to-week work as a VPSP.
Sure thing. Hello again. It's been so long. So VPSP, it's just really depending on the time of year. VPSP with programs and with focus on 5 specifically, and just the different tasks. It's very solo driven, so it just depends on the specific officer on their schedule. And so I do a lot of solo projects, a lot of things that I kind of just do on my own. So I'm always working on focus on 5 stuff. I have monthly correspondence starting in November up until district conventions time, just working with the future women in music speakers, just making sure they are accommodated. We're taking care of them. Really just a lot of keeping up with emails and project management, answering questions, using that 48-hour time window that is industry protocol to respond to messages, no matter which avenue that is used for it. Definitely for this position, plan for 1 to 2 hours a week during just normal season on computer work, answering emails, writing articles, working on projects like some motivational things for our students with the focus on 5-page, things like that. And then also plan for 2 to 3 hours for various committee meetings and other VPSP work each week. It seems like a lot, but in the long run, let's see, for example, this week, we have meetings a couple nights. So you also have those other nights that are free, which is nice. So it's nice to have that balance for sure. And there will always be work to do within the organization. And we always remember that we are working humans first that pays the bills and puts us in our houses. So we do our best to balance the best we can with our time, with everything. I will pass it over to my good friend, Siobhan.
Thank you, Leslie. I think that the VPME role is, I don't know, maybe it's me, but sometimes it feels like it's probably one of the more busier roles, with some of the day-to-day that happens, really depending on the members' needs. There will be some days where it's all quiet on the Western Front, and then other days when there's an email that comes at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and they're all in my brain. My brain had said tiny little fires, but just things to address and how we can best support our chapters and members. And so, depending on the day and the week and the time of year, this role is a little bit busier than other roles or other days. So of course, there's going to be some reoccurring meetings that Leslie talked about earlier, with the National Council meetings and winter meetings, etc. But we also have bi-monthly, every other month, every other week, bi-weekly meetings, essentially with the counselor or CVA calls, depending on the timing of the month. And then, of course, the VPME is having other meetings with district VPMs and the curriculum committee pretty regularly. And outside of those reoccurring meetings, the VPME is going to have different connections with other different stakeholders. So sponsors for chapters, directors of bands, the national president, because we both got copied on the same email that we need to huddle up about. Also connecting with our national headquarters, which helps to some of the major things that especially happen during the workday, or if somebody calls the headquarters building to specifically need something, we'll connect and collaborate with them. And then we're also connecting with chapter officers, their members, district counselors, CVAs, a little bit of everybody, depending on what the needs are. So those meetings can range from a quick 15-minute chat to sometimes an hour or so, just to kind of hammer out some major details of an issue. or an opportunity that we find. Usually the beginning and the end of the semester are the busiest for the VPME. And it's really interesting because I think at the beginning of the semesters, we're working on MEP review with the curriculum committee, and the VPME is really helping to be the cruise director of that. And also kind of tying up some additional projects that are in conjunction with the curriculum. And I want to say there's a lull in that type of work between the beginning and the end of the semester, in which the end of the semester we're tying up membership classes, and especially at the end of the fall semester, fall term, we're looking at collecting MEPs for the next. And in that time also, the beginning and the end of terms is usually when we start seeing applications and more conversations about petitioning groups, in which we do a lot of those petitioning groups in the spring. And again, the VPME is kind of the cruise director for that. So it's in the springtime, it tends to be pretty heavy with like at least one meeting every week with petitioning groups or their advisors, just to make sure that everything is going well. And so outside of some of the normal travel that was mentioned earlier, the VPME may go do some petitioning group installations, or also go to a couple of the different conferences that we attend. I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but I think that with this role and some of the other ones, and even what Leslie said, like you have to set boundaries and also prioritize the work that needs to get done, because there's a lot you can do, there's a lot that needs to be done, but there's only 12 hours a day and there's only one you. And so so I think that even with all the work that comes on, I have a couple of like pretty hard no days that I don't like to do meetings, or I turn my computer off at a certain time of day, and I take time to spend time with me and my family. And I think that's what's really important with this role, especially VPME can be, it can have a lot of like heavy topics that you have to deal with on top of your work day and like your life. And so, so I think taking that time and prioritizing you time, I think, is also as important as the time that we take and spend taking care of our students and our members. And so that's it for me. Erica, bring us on home.
Sure. Well, I'll bring the National Council home, but I want Dave and Thea and Roz and Jason to talk a little bit specifically about their groups. So as president, the best way I can say it is your work kind of to some extent can feel very daily, as I'm sure you've heard a couple of different times. But particularly in this role, it's unique because of the fact that the sorority functions every day. And so often the decisions that need to be made, they occur at a rolling pace. So it's, your decisions are always needing to be made. And so being able to go back to the home team, my home team is the National Council, and ask them questions, to then be able to take that information back, whether it be making a decision that national headquarters needs us to make, or, like Siobhan mentioned, she and I often are huddling on the weird thing that we got on email from whether it be a student or, our major stakeholders within the organization. So I found that in this role is very important to develop a solid, what I like to call a priority pyramid. So you are putting your priorities, or at least what are the most important things that need to be accomplished by the national organization at any given time. And then making sure that, you're able to give the amount of time and energy to ensure. So moving with a sense of urgency in some instances, and then taking on the hour, or trying to find time, is what I like to call the tomorrow, meaning like tomorrow, I will do that tomorrow. And so finding ways and identifying those times where that makes more sense than, jumping in and trying to put out all the fires all at one time, or conquering all the things all at one time. And as many of my other colleagues have said, it's necessary so that for your own sake, you're able to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished for the good of the sorority, but also taking care of yourself, because if you are a husk, you're not going to be valuable to the national organization in any way. So, finding that work-life balance and finding that sorority life balance is important as well. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Dave and Thea if y'all want to talk about the average EC members' time commitments, like what that level of week to week looks like.
So just like some of our other colleagues have shared, there are busy times and then you have some not busy times, right? And how busy your busy times are, it depends on how well you plan and prepare ahead of time, right? So we talked about going to those winter and summer council meetings. Part of the importance of those meetings, it gives us an opportunity to do long-term strategic planning and goal setting. And it gives us time to start to map out what our time and our commitments and our goals are so that we can incrementally plan out what we need to do. So it allows us to do some pre-planning so that we can identify, okay, here's some times when I'm going to be a little bit more busy. Here's some times where I have some downtime. I can work on more long-term projects. So, you know, those meetings that we go to, they're nice to fellowship, get together, do the work of the organization, but part of that work is planning, and it really does help you to manage the week to week, right? Of course, one of the things that I would say that we do weekly on the EC, and your weekly load depends on your position. Like Allison talked about her communications work and how that's more intensive during the week. Well, you know, on the EC, we also have a communications person. And so some of their work is weekly, but how we support her as other directors is we try to plan our post and the things we need her to do for us 6 weeks out so that then she can plan. And we also use tools like Hootsuite to help us to pre-plan and do some of that stuff. So it's not like you're drudging at a computer every week, right? Also, it allows us to making sure that we have our goals and strategies allows us to be very intentional. But one thing I was saying that we really want to do weekly is making sure we are responding to our stakeholders, right? When we get emails, Leslie talked about that industry standard of the turnaround. So when I say something weekly, you know, one of the things that we do weekly is we stay in contact with each other. And we stay in contact with our stakeholders via email or telephone, however they reach out to us. And so but you know, the work depends on the role, but there's always ways to, as everyone has said, keep that work life sorority balance. But it really does take some intentional planning, intentional focus, and sometimes some sacrifice. I will say, you know, all of us can talk about the event, the family event, the friend event, the rest that we have sacrificed. But on the flip side of that, you have times where you see your work come to fruition, like at convention, right? You see the students smiling faces and their interaction, or the alumni smiling faces and interactions, and the benefit they gain from the hard work we do. It makes it worth it. But also during the downtime, you can appreciate the downtime more because you have given all that you needed to give in those busy times. Dave, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you did a really nice job summarizing it. The one thing that I would add is on the executive council, you don't necessarily run for a specific position. You're running for a spot on the executive council. And then from the people who are elected, you're going to be assigned a different director role. And so there may be times where you're in a director position that maybe you have things that you don't know everything about, and that's okay. And so an important part of being successful in the role is knowing what your strengths are, but also knowing where you have opportunities to learn something and leaning into those people that have that knowledge to help you, whether that's a friend that you have, a committee member, a fellow director, a fellow national leader, because the reality is you're one person, and while we would like to be an expert in everything, it's also not humanly possible. And so you're going to lead with your strengths, but when you're also aware of where you have those opportunities to learn and you lean into that, that's going to make you 10 times more successful because you're developing your skill sets that you'll be able to apply into other areas. But you're also going to build those connections and those networks that are going to set you up not only for the work that we do within the organization, but you'll be able to leverage outside in your day-to-day work as well. So that'd be the one thing I'd add. But I think you did a fantastic job. I've been blessed to have Thea by my side as my vice chair. And we really balance each other out, and our strengths and opportunities really blend well together to allow us to be a nice, complete team. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jason and Rosalind.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rosalind McDonald, life member of Theta Phi chapter at Hampton University. Good evening. I'm one of the board of trustees for Tau Beta Sigma. And just to talk about the work-life balance, I want to agree with everything that everyone has said. Each one of our boards or councils are a little bit different on as far as our focus is concerned. For the board of trustees, our focus is more of the corporation, Tau Beta Sigma as an organization overall. We do very little as it pertains to student interaction. We do actually give out scholarships on behalf of the board every year. And so that's a part where we handle that process of actually going through their applications and things of that nature to award those scholarships. But we do support each and every council and board that's represented here this evening, whether it's at district council, district conventions, whether it's at the national council. So we always have a hand in there. We're ready to work just as well as everybody else. But our main focus is the corporation as a whole. The building facilities that we have in Stillwater, do we have a leaky roof? Is it ADA compliant? Is it enough room for the staff to sit in? Computers and phones and things of that nature. So a lot of those things get thrown our way to make sure that we're taking care of staff and things of that nature for us to be able to operate as an organization. I did talk about the scholarships that we also award every year. And then we also have one of the committees that I'm on, which is the capital development program. And that's our arm of donors and donations, whether it be from the membership or different other corporations and things of that nature. So creating campaigns to raise money for the organization so we can sustain for millions and millions years to come, and making sure that our budgets are taken care of and we're able to do the travels and we're able to support the chapters in their endeavors and things that they need, whether it's women in music speakers and things of that nature. So we're trying to make sure that we have a nice fat little cushion to keep us moving from one biennium to the next, 1 year to the next, 1 day to the next there. Also, life memberships is one of our big concerns as well, is to make sure that all of our life members have the opportunity to know what's going on with the organization, that they stay involved and committed to the ultimate cause of Tau Beta Sigma, as well as trying to obtain new members to be life members of the organization as well. So that's another piece that we do. And like Allison mentioned earlier, the annual Giving Tuesday Day is a program that we try to push as well. And then we make sure that all the other councils and the LAAs and everybody are involved. We do like a company front to make sure that we promote Giving Tuesday for Tau Beta Sigma overall across all of our different platforms. So we all do a little bit of everything. Like I've done chapter visits and stuff like that as well. So I do handle, but that's not my board of trustee role. That's that extra piece of time that I give out to do it. And it's fun. And I really do like dealing and talking to the chapter. So again, it is all time consuming. If I look at how much time I spend on a weekly basis doing board of trustees things, I would say maybe 3 hours a week, maybe at the most, just to kind of plan from start to finish, get a draft going and get it out to the other board members so they can review. And then once we come together at a meeting, we can plan and execute and go forward there. So I would say maybe 3 hours a week. It's not every week, maybe 2 times out of the month, outside of our actual meetings that we do once every 6 weeks. And then again, it just depends. Giving Tuesday comes once a year. So around that time, yes, I might spend more than just three hours a week. I may spend more time, trying to make sure the Giving Tuesday runs smoothly, and everything Allison tells us to do, we do it. So it can go off just without a hitch. So it just depends on what's going on. You may spend a little bit more time, but on an average, maybe 3 hours a week, maybe twice a month or something like that, if you're just trying to you wrap your head around how that works. Jason, did I cover everything?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what everybody else has said, is that depending on your role, there would be busier times, there would be lighter times, and you get as much as you put into it as far as time commitment goes.
Very good. So hopefully that gives you kind of an overview of just the time commitment, because that's the biggest part of being successful within these roles is, do you have the bandwidth and do you have the time to devote sufficient of your time and energies, as many of you are familiar with, if you're familiar with our oath of office. So the last couple of things we wanted to talk about are just overall expectations as a national leadership team member. When you step into these, the number one primary thing is that you are doing what you can to support the initiatives of the sorority. And of course, every group has their own unique initiatives that they are taking part of, but you have to understand that all of that work comes together in the center of who we are as a national organization. And really, these three bodies are kind of the representative bodies of the life of a member of Tau Beta Sigma. So the National Council, we work with the students as they are entering their lives as active members of Tau Beta Sigma. As you move to the alumni aspect of things, it's they have finished and they've completed their education. And then hopefully they'll get to a point where they are at a place where they can pay it forward. And so that's where the Board of Trustees comes in. So as an alumni, they then are able to really do what they can to give back to the national organization. Another part is just being a positive representative of the organization. That doesn't mean you're going to cross every T and dot every I, but what we do mean is that, you are someone that when they look at you, we tell our students they wear their letters all the time. And so we expect our national leadership team members to do that as well. And the final thing that I thought of, and I know that there'll be some other hot takes in the room, is that you are modeling a philanthropic spirit. So whether that be in sharing your talents with the national organization or your treasures, as we've talked about, that you are giving back to the organization in a substantial financial way. So those are the things that we expect from the national leadership team members, but I wanted to open up the floor to some of our other members if you had any other expectations that you felt like our national leadership team members should possess. I nailed it. Yeah, no.
Oh, I got some hot takes.
I was gonna say, Siobhan, girl, hit that.
Yeah, I feel like the members of the NLT should be personable and willing to connect with folks because we have a lot of different people that we interact with, from membership candidates who are freshmen in college to alumni who've been in the sorority longer than some people have been alive, or longer than you've been alive, or also we're working with director of bands and leaders of major associations that we want to collaborate with, etc. And so I think being able to connect with folks and be personable is ideal, because we're here as a business of, yes, our missions to start college bands, but we're here for people. And if you can't connect with people and you can't build those foundational relationships and communicate with people, then it's going to make it really hard for people to build that trust in you and for things to happen. Because I think that's important in the work that we do.
The other thing I would layer on too is really just making sure you're open-minded. As a member of the national leadership team, you're going to see things that are different than the way your home chapter did things. You're going to see things that are different the way that your district did things, than maybe your institution that you went through did things. And it's a great opportunity to learn and see there are other ways of accomplishing the same end goal. There are so many different people that come together that really want to accomplish the same outcomes, but the way that we go about them can be different, and that's okay. And I think that for me, when I think about this, stepping into national leadership, you're now representing a whole organization versus that little piece of the pie that you came from. And so it's rewarding and it's eye-opening to be able to see how everybody works, how everybody functions, and still is able to accomplish what it is that we set out to do when we took our oath into the organization.
Yeah, and building on what Siobhan and Dave said about personable people being able to trust you representing the whole organization. You also have to be confidential, right? Because there are going to be things you become aware of, situations you're involved in, things you are abreast of that is kept among the national leadership team until it's time to share. And so you have to be cognizant of your role as a national leadership team member and be able to honor confidentiality, whether it's somebody's personal issues, whether it's sorority issues. You have to be able to, you're in a position of trust, and you have to uphold the expectations of that position of trust.
Allison, take it away.
I think that it's important for everyone on the national leadership team, and I'm going to extend this to our district counselors and CVAs as well, is that you're on the national leadership team, so like be on the team. I think my expectation is that everyone is informed about what's going on as best as you can be, about the different branches of the organization, that you definitely speak up to ask questions and get clarity if you don't understand something that's going on. But with that and being on the team is also knowing the right way to approach questions, concerns, pushback, hard discussions. And that's not necessarily similar to what Thea just talked about, of being cognizant of when you can share information. It's also being cognizant of where the appropriate conversation should happen. So if it's something that you disagree with, or if it's something that you just aren't certain about, there is a kind of built-in chain of command, if you will, or at least we each have our point person in the Erica, David, and Dawn at the top of the 3 branches. So being able to appropriately go and have that professional conversation or ask your questions and not kind of airing out all the laundry out in public, I think that keeps the professionalism of the organization and continues to build trust. It doesn't mean that we can't have hard conversations. We have them, I promise. But making sure that we're doing it in a constructive way that supports where the organization and where each person can go next is really important. So I think both of them kind of mean being on the team, but from 2 different perspectives. Yeah, so be on the team. Wear the blue polo.
For now, no. And with that in mind, that's actually a great segue to our next topic, and our really more expansive topic is I would, empower and ask our national leadership team members to be collaborative, because as we mentioned, a lot of what we do have these moments where your mission and my mission they intersect perfectly, and maybe we should be working on those things together. And so from the National Council perspective, we had a couple of examples that we wanted to talk about. So Allison, because you have to listen to me all the time, I'll let you talk about how we work closely together.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I would say for my role as a VPCR, the person I talk with the most out of anyone is the national president. So something that I found to be successful, and what I'm sure Leslie and Siobhan and Erica can back me up in saying from being in this role in the past, is that you need to find a good rhythm with your national president. So whether it's your schedule for drafting communications and social media content and getting them approved, or talking about new ideas, there's always collaboration going on. And I really think that it strengthens our organization by having that point person, that second set of eyes, to always look at what's going out, to make sure that we're using the right voice to represent the sorority, and that it doesn't change too much based on who is drafting, or we have that consistent brand and look. So I definitely work with Erica, but also on specific projects. As Rosalind said earlier, I work closely with members of the Board of Trustees on different projects. So I co-chair or co-advise the scholarships committee along with Chris Wright, who happens to be the scholarships designee on the Board of Trustees. I work with Rosalind and Jason on capital development projects, so things like Giving Tuesday, as well as something we literally had a meeting about tonight, which is a future Giving Day that'll come up in March with the 13 days of Tau Beta Sigma. So there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. And then, of course, I work alongside the rest of the National Council on helping to advertise programs and events, do logistics support for different projects. I'm sure Leslie will talk about things like our workshop series, so being able to support those initiatives. And I like to describe VPCR. I feel that VPCR is kind of like the helper. So if there's a logistic support that's needed, like I'll throw that hat on. If communications need to go out, I'll draft that hat and then put it on and kind of keep going from there. To not leave the EC out, I do also work with, as I don't remember if it was David or Thea talking about the communications director. So I work with Michaela as well to try and coordinate communications for the organization and make sure that we're either in alignment with messaging that's going out or making sure we're not putting things out at the same time to avoid overloading the audiences that we share. That's a lot of the people, but there's also probably more. If I'm being honest, there's a lot of collaboration across the board.
But yes, I like to think the VPCR role also is, they say that I'm the face, but really that, like, I guess I am the face, but the VPCR is like our social media face and our online face. Meaning when we actually had Twitter accounts. We still have them, they're just at rest. And each office had one. And so the VPM one was, VP at the time, VPCM, the VPSP, it was NVPST. National president had a national president, and then the VPCR was Tau Beta Sigma. They did not have like just a VPCR Twitter, and the same thing goes with Instagram. We have a Tau Beta Sigma Instagram, and Allison oversees that as our VPCR. Siobhan, and if you wanted to talk a little bit about some of your collaborations that you work with on our council as well.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but probably the most collaboration is with the national president, and then with kind of working on chapter issues, or even helping our chapter visitation assistants or counselors with various things that they're working with our active membership. And then I love to do some good collaboration with our district VPMs too. They are, of course, doing all sorts of membership things within their district, and being able to collaborate with them on some of their projects, and also get them incorporated into some of the projects that we're doing on the national scale, is probably one of my favorite collaboration points. And then I think from there, my collaboration, I also do a lot of collaborating with the Kappa Kappa Psi National Vice President for Membership and Expansion, especially if we have any chapter issues that are for joint chapters to Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma, and especially for any expansion business that we're doing that has to do with bringing both Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma to a single location. So yeah, those are my collaboration pieces. Throwing it to you, Leslie.
We're gonna ping back and forth. Yeah, so as my lovely friends have said, we really work together a lot in lots of things. We're always doing different stuff. The VPSP we've joked about, but it is kind of true. It's kind of a lonely island at times. Like there's a lot of collaboration between the other three main national officers, and then I'm just kind of there hanging out. They're prepared, but there's lots of stuff. The national president and the VPSP work on planning national convention together. They're kind of their point person, the president's point person to get workshops, women and music speakers, performances, things like that. Same with, we started a summer workshop series that we're calling Mixtape, which is lovely. The VPCR, if I could say it right, would be lovely. We collaborate on different things, such as women in music, features, 13 days, just depends on the relationship of the current officers and our different skill sets. Allison is very well-versed in this stuff. I kind of am there if she needs it, but also she's fully capable of doing things. So I'm there to listen. And also as the immediate past VPCR, which is not always typical, but I'm there to provide some historical knowledge if need be. Just kind of all over the place. We really kind of zigzag all through every project together. Just depends on our skill set as well. We've talked about it a little bit, but remember that everybody here on National Leadership Team, we all have full-time jobs, and I think they're pretty much all different full-time jobs. And so my job, I am a public school band director, so I love to work with the VPPR on national intercollegiate band, stuff like that, because that is my skill set. That is what I do during the day, stuff like that. But just depends on the person and everything like that. So what type of collaboration do you have, Erica?
I think I'm probably the master collaborator in that regard, because essentially I collaborate with all of our national officers on whatever they are working on in particular. But then I am in meetings with Dave and our board chair, Don, to talk about all three organizations. So we have our own, we call it ED because it's Erica, Don, and David. But, so we're sitting in ED meetings together to talk about just the sorority at large. But then I also do a lot of collaboration with my own counterpart, Jessica Lee, who is the national president for Kappa Psi. And so we have our bi-weekly meeting with the two of us and our national executive director, Steve Nelson. I collaborate with all of our, this biennium, we started committees, or at least we started a larger group of committees. Committees kind of started in 2017, and so we had like 2 or 3 that now we are, pushing 8 at the moment, specifically from that do student-facing work, alongside the work that the TBS AAEC committees are doing as well. And so this biennium, it is collaborating with all of those, specifically the chairpersons of each of those committees, and making sure that if there are questions that I need to ask of our national headquarters, or if there are things that I need the National Council to consider, but also all of our officers, they kind of sit as advisors on those committees as well. So collaborating through that. And then specifically like collaborating with all of our counselors, and specifically like what is the work that needs to be done to make sure our chapters are okay. With our chapter visitation assistants, the national president oversees that program, and so that explains why one of the many reasons why Siobhan and I huddle up on a lot of different things, because if we need to review a chapter visit report to figure out why chapter is having issues, or if there are disciplinary things that come up, we work on and we collaborate on ensuring that a chapter has a healthy situation, or we're able to get them back to a place of proper function. So I am the person who's kind of the tether that everyone kind of, okay, Erica, we need this. And that's kind of what comes with being the national president, is you are, again, the face of the organization. And so everything kind of connects to you. You are the 7 degrees of separation to everything that happens in the national organization. Some things are I can be hands off about, because chairpersons are in charge, or other members of the national leadership team they are the point person, and they just report back to me. And we have a great group of people who are great at what they do, and they do the work, and they're here to do the work. And so oftentimes, as a national president, you can step back and know that the work is going to get done, because we have a great group of dedicated individuals on our national leadership team. Yeah. So any other, and Dave and Roz and Thea and Jason, if you wanted to talk about any other collaborations that you may have from your groups, or at least aspects. And then we'll round up with the last topic, and then break out in some breakout rooms for those who are ready to jump into some.
Yeah. So on the TPSAA side, I think that a lot of the collaborations that have been shared are similar within our space. It's just where the alumni side of the organization where those happen. So there are going to be those same committee conversations, those same director to chairperson conversations, director to director conversations. I think that one of the other big focuses, though, is the work that in the partnership we have with the National Council, because this is the National Council is a group that oversees that active member experience, where we see that alumni experience. And the goal is to really make that one seamless experience across both groups. And so that once you're an active member, that it shouldn't feel like you've entered a new organization as an alumni, but you've just continued the experience you've already had and just evolved that now to balance in with the changes that are happening in your life. I think the other area where we have a lot of collaboration in the Alumni Association side is with our partners in the Kappa Kappa Psi Alumni Association. So I do work closely with their chairperson, Greg Boyke, and just talk about the status of both alumni associations, make sure that we're sharing best practices with one another so that both groups can thrive and succeed. But also looking at where we have intersectionality points. We do have local alumni associations that support jointly. So whether that's a school-based local alumni association, a regional-based, or a district-based. And so there are times where, whether it's the formation of new groups that are happening or whether it is planning of experiences, we have to work closely together to make sure that the requirements of the Kappa Kappa Psi Alumni Association and the Tau Beta Sigma Alumni Association are both being met. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Thea. That's the space that she's in this biennium that they can share a little bit more about that collaboration.
Yes, so as Dave said, he collaborates with Greg, the chair of the AABOD. I collaborate extensively with Kadeem, my LAA counterpart on the BOD. And so we are in weekly communication, especially now that we're in the midst of district convention planning season, as we work to support the DAA leaders in that planning process. But we also collaborate a lot around, as Dave said, the formation of new joint LAAs and the renewal and support of programs and operations of our joint LAAs. So that's definitely a space where we do a lot of collaboration with those individuals, but we also have to collaborate with the LAA leaders, right? And the various forms, we call all of our LAAs, whether they're regional, district, or chapter. And so we have to collaborate with those leaders, right, to get things done. But I think one area that we really delved into is that we all have to collaborate with the people at national headquarters, right? We have to collaborate in each of our roles to get things done through national headquarters. Sometimes we're giving information, sometimes we're requesting information, sometimes we're working together to get some tasks done. And so we have to be able to collaborate also with each of the roles at national headquarters to ensure that we are functioning in accordance with the guidelines of the organization, but also that we're able to have the data, the information, the processes, the procedures, the resources that we need to get our work done. So that's an additional area of collaboration that I can add to this collaboration soup.
Now you got me wanting some soup there. Okay.
I love soup in the winter.
Yes, on a cold winter day today. Yes, absolutely. And then Roz and Jason, if you want to talk a little bit about any collaborations you have either within the board or across the national leadership team.
Yeah, sure. So just like the other two councils, we've got a lot of collaboration with our brothers. Might have heard of the NIV, so there's a lot of collaboration there with the Kappa side and fundraising for that. And then we also work directly with donors too. So I think that's the one unique part for the board, along with the legacy committee working with past national presidents.
And I thought of one other collaboration that I didn't mention because we have one here on this call this evening. As a national president, I work with each of our district presidents as they are planning their district events, their district convention each year. And so working with them to make sure that they have all the resources that they need to have a successful, yes, that's you, successful event for the evening. So for the year. So that is a big one. And whether it's we're working through that or specifically just them overseeing all of the things that happen in their district. Each of our officers collaborate heavily with the adjoining, or I should say the mirroring office within each district. And so, yeah. The last thing I wanted to talk about are just some of the key places where the national leadership team represents Tau Beta Sigma. And so some of the key places we go every year, or we try to at least have a presence there in some form, is our various trade shows. The two ones that we go to the most are the Midwest Clinic in Chicago and the Texas Music Educators Association Clinic in San Antonio. In fact, the TMEA clinic, we were recognized during their anniversary year for having been a booth for 35 of their, I don't remember how old they were that year, but we do have a presence because we are a band, and that is a music clinic. We also have been trying to do our best to get out in some more places where music and specifically the marching arts are happening. So for example, we are working and looking. This year, we sent our national executive director to DCI, the DCI finals, but that is something that we are looking to have more of a presence at. And over the last 6 years, we've been trying to attend one or more of our HBCU specific Battle of the Bands, whether that be Honda. This year it's in Alabama, but when it was in Atlanta, we would always try to send a group. And then most recently, there's been a new one being hosted in Houston. And so we've sent people there. And so we're just trying to make sure that where all the band is happening, that Tau Beta Sigma is there. And so working through all those, and we're looking to expand in other areas and other places. So those are just some of the few places that we are represented. But with that in mind, I wanted to open up the floor for any questions on anything we've discussed this evening, and then give a couple of minutes for you to hop into other rooms and talk specifically to whichever area you're most interested in, or like I said, treat it buffet style and maybe jump in here and go to this room. And yeah, so we want to open up the floor to our three guests and see if you had any questions for any one of us or anything we've discussed this evening. Theo.
So I don't know if you mentioned this or not. I stepped out to use the restroom real quick, but I was just kind of wondering about the actual process of running for district officer. I'm 22, so obviously I'm not eligible until, I'm 25, but I'm just kind of curious about the process. What makes it easier? What's kind of good to know about that?
Did anybody want to take that one? I actually missed part of the question. So if anyone wants to take on that role.
Yeah, so the process for running for national council for Tau Beta Sigma, it starts with submitting your packet, which includes a letter of intent, your resume, which is either I think it's usually 2 pages with should be either both your professional and sorority experience, or a sorority or a professional vitae in 2 separate documents there, and then some letters of recommendation. And so, at least from my perspective, it always starts with your letter of intent, outlining, what qualifies you for this role, and even giving a high level of what you would like to do in that role if selected. And then getting those letters of recommendation from a couple of different folks, especially one of them being a person in your professional type of sphere. Yes, Leslie did put in here setting calendar reminder November 2026 to remind Theo to run for things. Yeah, so we'll be back for you. We'll tag you in the post and on whatever internet platform it is at that time. And then from there, at district conventions, once your packet's been submitted by whatever the deadline is, you're welcome to go to the district convention, either in your town or your district, or if you want to go to other ones, that's up to you. And then you'll have an opportunity to, be able to have some FaceTime with students, be around their convention. And then over the past few years using the internets and technology. I feel like an old person when I say that, but we've been able to announce all those who have intent to run for an office in some of our presentations that we have for the student delegation, or not just student, for the Tau Beta Sigma delegation that's there. So from alumni to board of trustees and national council members, they all have their information there. And then also your information is put on our national convention website. So for all peoples to be able to go in, learn more about you, and then at the national convention is where you'll get even more time to be in front of the delegates. You'll go through some interviews, as well as interview with a committee, as well as going into different caucuses, which is smaller groups of our chapter delegates to learn more about, for them to learn more about you. And that's specifically for the National Council. For the Board of Trustees and Alumni Association, those elections are held before convention, and so you'll have opportunities in those separate roles to be able to have your information present to those members, and they vote virtually prior to convention happening. And if Thea or Rosalind or Dave or Jason, if y'all wanted to give any extra layers on what that looks like for the AA and the Board of Trustees, then please do.
Yeah, from the Alumni Association, the process you outlined is very similar up until the point of election. The one thing that we do have is we will have an online Meet the Candidates forum prior to the election taking place. This will be our first year. We're actually electing the new executive council members prior to convention, with the goal of helping ease the transition of directors from one role into the next. So we're very excited for that, but the process is the same. So the same packet that you submit for National Council will be the same one that you submit to run for the Alumni Association Executive Council. The biggest difference between the two, though, is just that the voting is going to be by anyone who's at the standard or gold star member level of the Alumni Association, and that election happening prior to convention.
And then one thing I'll say for the board is where, when we're talking about the national council running, the nominations committee at national convention are the ones who slate who they feel are most suitably prepared. Whereas we, the national council, are the slating body for the board of trustees. And so we do all of our interviews with our candidates ahead of time, and then we create the slate that is presented to our life members, who then make the decision on who the board of trustees members are for the next biennium. And yeah, Jason and Roz, did y'all have anything else to add to that as board members?
The only thing that I would add to that is the life members. There's a registration period for them to request or to register for a ballot, and then that is followed by the voting period afterwards.
Very much the same way that David explained it is, with us making this transition, it allows for that transition to happen at national convention. So they come in ready to meet and start setting, their goals for the biennium, deciding who they're within internally, who their leaders are going to be. So who their chair and their vice chair are going to be. All of that takes place at national convention, and newly elected officers or newly elected board members come in with that knowledge and knowing where they need to be just to join those meetings. Yeah. Faith, I believe you have a question. Hopefully, Theo, that did address all of your questions. All right.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Absolutely. Faith.
I don't have a question so much as just appreciation for everything that you all have done. So I got your email and I was like, okay, I've never checked it out. Let me just go on Zoom. I will tell you that I am a band director as well. So Leslie, we share that, clarinet player. And I've been in the classroom for 31 years. You too, Rosalind? Okay, that's awesome. But what you all are doing is fantastic and way more than I can participate in. But anyway, I'm amazed at all the behind the scenes work that goes on something that I just wasn't privy to. I mean, I've been out of college for 30 years and didn't know that there was this much involved. Those of you who work heavily with Kappa Psi, do you know Daniel George? Anybody know Daniel? Daniel's my little brother. Danny's my little brother. So anyway, we're having a whole family moment right here. So Erica, oh yay. Who will be at TMEA? Who will be there? I will come see you, Leslie, and I will come see you too. I also, now that I'm retired, I'm working, mentoring and clinicking and judging and, all the things. But I'll be down at convention with Orion Instruments. So when I get a few minutes from them, I'll come by and say hi. But anyway, I'm gobsmacked by how fabulous that you all are and how much you do. So anyway, very appreciative. I will probably be signing off because I can't commit to that right now, especially when you talked about February and April, February and March being really busy. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know, I'm clinicking and all the things. So anyway, yeah, I'm appreciative. And Leslie and Jamon, I can't wait to meet you. So I'll see you in February. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Oh, Danny. Any other questions before we, let everyone go kind of where they want to go? All right. Well, like I said, the breakout rooms are open. I will stay in this room because I'm not as interesting as everyone else on the screen. Obviously pop in wherever you can. But you can also, if this is your time to jump ship, you can also do that as well. It's come and go at this moment. But we want to say thank you for allowing us the time to share with you all the great work and the work that we are doing, that intentional work. And please feel free to reach out to us, after this meeting or after the interaction that you have in various breakout rooms this evening, as you were thinking about what your packages are going to look like in terms of submitting. And yeah, thank you for being with us. And I think we'll stop recording now and we will jump in. So have a great evening, everyone, and we'll see you in the next breakout room.